Hello, my dear adventurers. Welcome back to another evening of shared stories and mysteries from Hawkins, Indiana. Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating questions surrounding Stranger Things Season 5, the final chapter of this incredible saga that's captured hearts around the world for nearly a decade now. Who's coming back? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. We've lost so many beloved characters over the years, from the very first season all the way through season 4. Some deaths hit harder than others. Some felt inevitable, the tragic cost of fighting monsters from another dimension. And some still keep us up at night, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there's a way they could return. Tonight, we're going to explore every possibility, every theory, every hint that's been dropped about characters we might see again when Stranger Things returns for its final bow. And I'll be honest with you, some of these returns are almost certain based on confirmed reports and behind the scenes footage. Some are wild speculation built on fan theories and wishful thinking, and some are just pure hope from a fan base that isn't ready to let go of the characters we've loved. But that's what makes this so fascinating, isn't it? The Duffer Brothers have never been predictable, and with the stakes higher than ever in Season 5, with Hawkins literally being torn apart by rifts to the Upside Down, absolutely anything feels possible. You know, it's interesting when you think about how attached we've become to these characters. Stranger Things premiered back in July of 2016, nearly a decade ago now. We've watched these kids grow up on screen, dealing with increasingly impossible situations. We've seen Millie Bobby Brown transform from a 12-year-old girl with a shaved head into a fully fledged action hero and one of the most recognizable young actresses in the world. We've watched Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, and Noah Schnapp navigate adolescence while fighting interdimensional monsters. And we've lost people along the way. Good people, heroes. Some deserved better, some got the endings they earned. And now, as we approach the final season, we're forced to confront the fact that we might lose even more. But before we say goodbye, there's something deeply human about wanting to see these faces one more time. The characters who've died, the ones who sacrificed themselves, the ones who were taken too soon. We want closure. We want one last moment to remember them, to honor them, to process our grief. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Season 5 is set to premiere in 3 parts starting November 26th, 2025. Volume 1 arrives on November 26th with the first 4 episodes. Volume 2 drops on Christmas Day with episodes 5, 6, and 7. And then, on New Year's Eve, the series finale arrives. The wait has been excruciating, hasn't it? It's been over 3 years since Season 4 ended on that devastating cliffhanger, with Max in a coma, Vecna wounded but alive, and massive rifts tearing through Hawkins. 3 years of theories and speculation and impatience. But the Duffers have been clear that this final season is their biggest and most ambitious yet. They filmed for an entire year, capturing over 650 hours of footage. They've described it as 8 blockbuster movies. They've said there will be deaths, multiple deaths of main characters, the kind of losses that will hurt and resonate. They've promised tears, loads of them, because making this season was emotional for everyone involved. The cast and crew have been together for nearly 10 years. Saying goodbye to this world, to these characters, to this journey, it's been profound for all of them. And that emotion, that sense of finality, is going to translate to the screen. The Duffers have also hinted that basically every character who's ever appeared in the show will return in some capacity, whether through flashbacks, visions, or something else entirely. And that's what we're here to explore tonight. Because in a show about alternate dimensions and psychic powers and creatures that defy the laws of nature, death doesn't necessarily mean gone forever. We've seen this before. Hopper was presumed dead at the end of Season 3, and he returned in Season 4, alive in a Russian prison. Eleven died at the end of Season 1, at least it seemed like she had, and she came back in Season 2. Max died for a full minute in the Season 4 finale before Eleven brought her back, though she remains in a coma, her mind lost somewhere between life and death. So when we talk about characters returning, we're not just talking about flashbacks or dream sequences. In the world of Stranger Things, we're talking about genuine possibilities that could reshape the narrative in unexpected ways. So grab your blanket, settle in, get comfortable in your favorite spot, and let's begin this journey through the possible returns that could make Season 5 the most emotional, surprising, and satisfying conclusion we could hope for. We'll explore confirmed returns like Dr. Brenner's mysterious reappearance. We'll discuss likely possibilities like Kaylee coming back to help Eleven in the final battle. We'll examine the heartbreaking confirmations that some fan-favorite characters won't be returning, and why their absences might actually serve the story better than their presence would. And we'll dive into some of the wilder theories out there, the ones that sound impossible until you remember this is Stranger Things, where impossible things happen every season. If you enjoy deep dives like this and want to support the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon, linked in the description. Your support helps me create these long-form explorations that really dig into the details and theories that make Stranger Things such a rich world to explore. But for now, let's talk about the character returns that have everyone talking, theorizing, and preparing their emotions for what might be the most devastating and beautiful ending in television history. Let's start with perhaps the most shocking confirmed return that's had the entire fandom buzzing since the first hints emerged. Dr. Martin Brenner, played by the masterful Matthew Modine, is coming back for Season 5. And I have to say, this one has me absolutely fascinated, genuinely intrigued in ways I didn't expect, because Brenner has now died twice on screen, and yet here we are, discussing his return for a third appearance. The man is apparently indestructible, a villain who refuses to stay buried. Now, if you remember back to Season 1, Brenner was first seemingly killed at the end of that season when the Demogorgon attacked him in Hawkins' lab. We saw him come face to face with this creature from another dimension, this monster that he'd essentially helped unleash through his experiments with Eleven. And then the camera cut away, leaving his fate ambiguous but strongly implied. Most of us assumed that was the end of Papa, the cruel scientist who'd spent years torturing children in the name of science and national security. But then, surprise, Season 4 revealed he'd survived that encounter, and not just survived but thrived in a way, continuing his work with government backing at a secret facility in Nevada. The Duffer Brothers explained in interviews that soldiers managed to shoot the Demogorgon before it could finish Brenner off. He came away remarkably unscathed, considering he'd just been attacked by an interdimensional predator, which honestly stretches believability to its breaking point. But we accepted it because Matthew Modine's performance is so utterly compelling, so layered with menace and twisted paternal affection, that we wanted him back in the story. His presence in Season 4 added so much depth to Eleven's arc. The Nina Project, where she had to relive her trauma to regain her powers, couldn't have worked without Brenner there, manipulating her, pushing her, refusing to let her leave even when she begged. That whole sequence showed us the full horror of their relationship, how he genuinely seemed to believe he loved her while simultaneously treating her as an experiment, a weapon, a thing to be controlled rather than a person to be cherished. Then, in the penultimate episode of Season 4, we watched Brenner get shot multiple times by military snipers while trying to escape with Eleven after the Nina facility was attacked. He was hit at least 3 times that we saw, possibly more, by high-powered rifles designed to kill from a distance. He died in Eleven's arms in the middle of the Nevada desert, refusing to let go until she called him Papa one final time. It was an emotional, deeply complex scene that showed both the manipulative monster he was and the twisted, genuine love he felt for the children he'd experimented on. We watched him take his last breath, saw his hand go slack. The camera lingered on his lifeless body lying in the sand. It was final. It was definitive. And yet, Matthew Modine has confirmed through Instagram posts, through behind-the-scenes videos, through carefully placed hashtags, that he's back for Season 5, appearing in some capacity that has everyone asking the same question. How? In the behind-the-scenes videos Modine posted to Instagram, we see him sitting in a makeup chair having facial prosthetics applied. The makeup is elaborate, professional grade, the kind that takes hours to put on, and it makes him look significantly older than his last on-screen appearance, with deeper wrinkles, more pronounced aging, the look of someone who's been through hell and lived to tell about it. The hashtags he used on these posts were deliberately provocative, almost teasing. He tagged them with indestructible Dr. Martin Brenner, Papa, Season 5, BTS for behind the scenes. The message was clear. Brenner is back, and the fact that he's indestructible is part of the point. This isn't just a surprise cameo or a brief flashback. This is a character who's been through something, who survived yet again against all odds, who has more secrets to reveal before Stranger Things ends for good. So how is this possible? How does someone survive being shot 3 times at close range by military-grade weapons designed for lethal efficiency? How does a man who should absolutely be dead keep coming back? Well, there are several theories floating around the fan community, and each one is more intriguing than the last, each one opening up different possibilities for how Season 5 might use Brenner and what his return might mean for the larger story. The first theory is the simplest and most straightforward. Brenner somehow survived again through medical intervention and sheer will. Maybe the military forces that were hunting Eleven at the Nina facility actually saved him, ironic as that sounds. After all, they would have wanted to interrogate him extensively about Hawkins' lab, about the experiments he'd conducted, about everything he knew regarding the upside down and psychic phenomena. He represented decades of research, irreplaceable knowledge. so maybe they provided immediate medical attention, emergency surgery right there in the field, and managed to stabilize him despite his injuries. Maybe he's been recovering this entire time in a military hospital or black site facility, and he's going to appear in season 5, having finally healed enough to be mobile again. The advanced aging we see in the makeup Modine is wearing could indicate that season 5 jumps forward in time, perhaps several months or even a full year after the events of season 4. This would give Brenner time to heal from what should have been fatal gunshot wounds and potentially escape whatever military custody he was being held in. Remember, this is a man who's proven himself to be a survivor multiple times over. He's manipulative, intelligent, and utterly ruthless when it comes to self-preservation. If anyone could talk his way out of military detention or find a way to escape, it's Martin Brenner. This explanation, while possible and even somewhat plausible, does feel a bit tired narratively speaking. The Duffers already brought Brenner back from the dead once, pulling off that resurrection twist with the reveal that he'd survived the Demogorgon attack. Doing it again, having him survive another seemingly fatal encounter through luck and medical intervention, might strain the audience's suspension of disbelief. It would start to feel less like interesting storytelling and more like the show being unwilling to let go of a popular character, even when his story should have ended. The second theory is much more interesting from a dramatic standpoint, and seems more likely given the Duffers' approach to storytelling. Brenner appears exclusively through flashbacks, particularly flashbacks to the late 1950s and early 1960s, when he first encountered Henry Creel and began the experiments that would eventually lead to the creation of Hawkins Lab's Numbered Children program. This makes a tremendous amount of sense when you consider that Season 5 is reportedly going to explore much more of the Rainbow Room era, digging deeper into the origins of the Numbered Children, showing us things we haven't seen before about how this all began. We know from Season 4's revelations that Brenner found Henry Creel after the family massacre in 1959, after Henry had used his nascent psychic abilities to kill his mother and sister and frame his father for the crimes. But what we don't know is exactly how that encounter went down, how Brenner even knew to look for Henry in the first place, how he convinced the authorities to let him take custody of this clearly dangerous child, what those early experiments looked like when he first started studying Henry's abilities. The aging makeup that Matthew Modine is wearing in those behind-the-scenes photos that surfaced online could be showing us an older version of Brenner from the 1970s or early 1980s, perhaps in scenes that detail his work with Terry Ives, Eleven's mother, during her participation in the MK experiments. Or it could show us Brenner developing the sensory deprivation tank technology that would become so crucial to accessing the Upside Down. These flashback sequences could be absolutely crucial to understanding how to defeat Vecna in the present-day story. After all, Brenner studied Henry for 2 full decades before the Rainbow Room massacre. He documented everything, analyzed every aspect of Henry's powers, tried countless methods to replicate and control those abilities. If anyone understood Henry's weaknesses, his limitations, his vulnerabilities, it was Papa. The information contained in Brenner's research could be the key that unlocks how to finally destroy Vecna. Maybe the surviving characters find his old files, his hidden notes, some record he kept of observations about Henry that reveal the method to defeating him once and for all. The third theory is the one that really gets the fan community buzzing with excitement and dread in equal measure, the one that would recontextualize everything we've seen from this character across 4 seasons. What if Brenner has powers himself? What if he's always had psychic abilities? Perhaps the very first person to manifest these abilities naturally before he ever started experimenting on children. Matthew Modine himself has hinted strongly at this theory in various interviews over the years, asking pointed questions that seem designed to make fans think about these possibilities. He's asked things like, how did Brenner survive the Demogorgon attack in Season 1 when that creature was killing everyone it encountered? How did Brenner survive the Rainbow Room Massacre in 1979 when Henry Creel, as powerful as he was slaughtering every living thing in that facility, children and adults alike, without mercy or hesitation? How did Brenner, a mere human with no demonstrated powers, manage to escape that bloodbath? And most tellingly, most importantly for this theory, remember that scene in Season 4 when Eleven tried to use her powers against Brenner after she'd recovered her abilities and desperately wanted to leave the Nina facility? She'd successfully used her powers to throw 3 armed guards across the room, sending them flying with barely any effort. She was at full strength, perhaps stronger than she'd ever been. And then she turned those powers on Brenner, trying to force him to let her leave, trying to make him understand that she wasn't his possession anymore. And nothing happened. Her powers simply didn't work on him. He stood there completely unfazed, completely calm, and then he smiled that deeply unsettling smile and said, "You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you?" That moment has always stuck with fans as profoundly disturbing, as suggesting there's something more going on with Brenner than we've been told. Was he just bluffing, pretending to be immune to create psychological pressure, or does he actually have some kind of defense against psychic attacks, some ability of his own that protects him? The theory goes that Brenner isn't just a scientist studying psychic phenomena. He's Patient Zero, the very first person with these abilities, and that's exactly why he became so obsessed with replicating and controlling them. This would explain so much about his character, so many of the mysteries that have surrounded him throughout the series. It would explain his survival against supernatural threats that should have killed him. It would explain his deep understanding of how the powers work, understanding that seems to go beyond mere academic study into something more intuitive, more personal. It would explain why he was so confident, so fearless, even when facing down demogorgons or psychic children who could kill him with a thought. He knew he was protected somehow. He knew he had abilities that gave him an edge. In a recent interview with Parade magazine, Matthew Modine floated this exact theory in response to questions about his character returning in Season 5. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the fascinating thing about Brenner is wondering how he even got this job in the first place. How do you go to the government and say you want to do experiments with young children to teach them psychic powers? You'd have to be uniquely qualified for that position. You'd need to understand these abilities in a way that most scientists couldn't possibly understand them, and Modine suggested that maybe Brenner is his own patient zero, that he might be the most powerful person in any room full of those psychic children, that his own abilities were what qualified him to study and control this phenomenon. Because if this theory is correct, if it's revealed in season 5 that Brenner has had powers all along, it would be an absolutely incredible reveal that would recontextualize everything we've watched over the past 9 years. Every interaction with Eleven would take on new meaning. Every experiment would become more sinister, tinged with the knowledge that Brenner was using children to explore and amplify abilities he himself possessed. Every manipulation would be revealed as coming from someone who truly understood what these children were going through because he'd experienced it himself, but who chose cruelty and control over empathy and guidance. It would also open up fascinating possibilities for the final battle against Vecna. If Brenner has powers, even diminished ones from age or injury, or simply not being as naturally gifted as Henry was, he could potentially help the team in their fight. His knowledge combined with his abilities could provide insights or strategies that no one else could offer. He might know how to get into Vecna's head, how to disrupt his connection to the Upside Down, how to exploit weaknesses that only someone with similar abilities would recognize. Or, and this is the darker possibility that some fans have suggested, maybe Brenner's powers are what allowed Vecna to become so powerful in the first place. Maybe there's a psychic connection between them that's never been severed, a link forged during all those years of study and experimentation. Maybe Brenner can still feel Vecna out there in the Upside Down, and maybe Vecna can sense Brenner as well. That connection could be exploited as a weapon used to track or influence Vecna. Or it could be a liability, something Vecna could use to manipulate or control Brenner, turning him into an unwitting agent of chaos. The fourth major theory about Brenner's return involves the Upside Down itself and the strange properties we've observed in that dimension over the course of the series. What if Brenner actually did die from those gunshot wounds in the Nevada desert, but somehow his consciousness transferred to the Upside Down? We know that dimension preserves things in bizarre ways, trapping them in time. It's frozen on November 6th, 1983, the day Will disappeared and the first gate opened. What if when someone with deep knowledge of the supernatural, someone who's spent their entire adult life studying the Upside Down and its creatures, dies near a gate or near someone with powerful psychic abilities, like 11, something of them remains. Not their body, but their minds, their memories, their consciousness, trapped in that dimension between dimensions? This would explain why Brenner looks so aged and different in the season 5 footage we've glimpsed. He's not quite alive in any traditional sense. He's not quite dead either. He's something else entirely, something in between, something that exists in multiple states simultaneously, present in our reality as a kind of echo or projection, while his true essence is trapped in the Upside Down. And maybe 11 can communicate with him through her powers, pull information from him about what he learned during all those years of experimentation. Maybe Vecna can manifest him, using Brenner's image and voice as a weapon against 11, showing her the man who shaped her entire life, reminding her of the trauma she endured. This would be a very Stranger Things way to bring back a character while still respecting the finality of death, while acknowledging that in this world of alternate dimensions and psychic powers, the boundaries between life and death aren't as clear cut as they are in our reality. Whatever the explanation ends up being, whatever method the Duffers use to bring Brenner back into the story, his return in Season 5 has been confirmed by Matthew Modine's own social media posts and the behind-the-scenes footage that's leaked online. The only questions that remain are how prominent his role will be, whether he appears in every episode or just a few key scenes, and what secrets he'll reveal that could change everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down, about Hawkins' lab, about the origins of these psychic abilities. The Duffer Brothers have said repeatedly that Season 5 will answer all the remaining mysteries of the series, that they're going to tie up every loose end and explain everything that needs explaining. And Brenner has been central to those mysteries from the very beginning, from the very first episode when we saw him leading the search for Eleven after she escaped from the lab. He created the program that gave us Eleven and all the other numbered children. He captured and studied Henry Creel, the boy who would become Vecna, the ultimate villain of the entire series. He built the sensory deprivation tank technology that allowed Eleven to access other dimensions, opening the gateway that started this entire nightmare. His ambition, his cruelty, his twisted sense of purpose and belief that the ends justified any means, it all led directly to the catastrophe that's now consuming Hawkins, threatening to spread beyond that small town to engulf the entire world. In many ways, Brenner is as responsible for the Upside Down invasion as Vecna himself. Vecna might be the monster, the direct threat, the one actively trying to merge dimensions and destroy humanity. But Brenner created the circumstances that allowed Vecna to become what he is, that gave him the opportunity to access the Upside Down, that put psychic abilities in the hands of a child who was already deeply disturbed and dangerous. So having Brenner appear one final time, whether as a living character somehow surviving his third near-death experience, or as a flashback showing us the origins of this nightmare, or as a vision or supernatural manifestation, makes perfect narrative sense. His story needs a proper ending. The show needs to address his legacy, the full weight of what he's done and what it's cost. And for Eleven, seeing Papa one more time could be the closure she desperately needs to fully embrace her powers and her identity without the burden of his manipulation hanging over her. Or it could be the trauma that finally breaks her, that pushes her to her absolute limit and forces her to choose between revenge and redemption, between becoming like Brenner and choosing to be better than he ever was. Either way, whatever form his return takes, Matthew Modine's appearance in Season 5 as Dr. Martin Brenner is one of the most anticipated aspects of the final season. The fan community has been dissecting every frame of his behind-the-scenes videos, analyzing every word of his interviews, trying to figure out exactly how this impossible return will be executed and what it will mean for the characters we love. And honestly, I genuinely cannot wait to see how the Duffers handle it, how they justify bringing back this character who's died twice, how they use him to illuminate the mysteries that remain, and how they give his story the ending it deserves, whether that's redemption or damnation or something in between that acknowledges the complexity of a man who did terrible things in service of what he believed was a greater good. Now let's talk about a character who absolutely needs to return in Season 5, someone who's been conspicuously and frustratingly absent since Season 2, leaving one of the biggest unresolved storylines in the entire series. Kali Prasad, also known as 8 or 008, played by Linnea Berthelsen, represents both a missed opportunity and a potential game changer for the final season. Her introduction in the infamous Chicago episode, The Lost Sister, was controversial at the time, sparking debates that continue to this day. Many fans felt that episode broke the narrative flow of Season 2, pulling us away from Hawkins at the most crucial moment imaginable, right when Will was being possessed by the Mind Flayer, and everyone was desperately trying to save him, to focus on what felt like a standalone adventure with a character we'd never met before. It became the lowest rated episode in the entire series on IMDb, sitting at a 6.1 out of 10 compared to the show's usual ratings in the 8 to 9 range. People were genuinely angry about it, feeling like the Duffers had wasted an episode on filler content when they should have been advancing the main plot. And yet, despite that lukewarm or even hostile reception at the time, despite the fact that many viewers consider it a misstep in an otherwise excellent season, Kylie herself is a fascinating character with tremendous untapped potential. And more importantly, from a storytelling perspective, she represents a massive loose end that Season 5 absolutely must address if it wants to properly conclude this saga. Think about what Kaylee represents in the larger mythology of Stranger Things. She is the only other numbered child from Hawkins' lab, who we know for certain is alive, free, and in possession of her powers. She escaped the lab at some point before the 1979 massacre, when Henry Creel murdered almost everyone in the Rainbow Room. She's been living on the run for years, gathering other outcasts and misfits around her, forming a found family of sorts with people who've been hurt by the system. And she's been systematically tracking down and taking revenge on the people who hurt her during her time in Hawkins' lab, the guards and scientists and administrators who participated in Brenner's cruel experiments. That's a hell of a character arc to just abandon, to leave hanging without any resolution or follow-up. The Duffer Brothers themselves have acknowledged this, have admitted that Kaylee's story needs to be completed. In a 2017 interview with Entertainment Weekly shortly after Season 2 aired and the backlash to the Lost Sister episode was in full force, they addressed the criticism directly and said that the chances are very high that Kaylee comes back. They said it would be weird, narratively unsatisfying, if they didn't solve her storyline, if they didn't bring her back into the fold somehow. And with Season 5 being the final season, the absolute last chance to tie up loose ends and give closure to every character whose story intersects with this nightmare in Hawkins, it seems almost certain that we'll see 8 again. But in what capacity? How will she fit into the final battle against Vecna? What role can she play that would justify bringing her back and would redeem that controversial Season 2 episode by proving it wasn't filler after all, but rather set up for something important in the endgame? There are several fascinating theories about this, each one exploring different possibilities for how Kaylee's unique abilities could factor into defeating Vecna and closing the gates to the Upside Down forever. The first and most straightforward theory is that Kaylee returns to help Eleven fight Vecna directly, combining their powers in a way that neither could achieve alone. Think about the nature of their abilities and how they complement each other. Eleven's powers are primarily physical, concrete, tangible. She has telekinesis, the ability to move objects with her mind, to crush things, to throw people across rooms. She can close gates to other dimensions through sheer force of will and power. She can astral project, send her consciousness to other places and even other times. Her abilities are about direct action, about physically confronting threats and overpowering them through raw strength. She's essentially a psychic weapon, exactly what Brenner designed her to be, a tool for destroying enemies and protecting American interests during the Cold War. But Vecna's primary weapon isn't physical force, not really. Yes, he can kill people. Yes, he's physically dangerous, with his monstrous form and his control over the creatures of the Upside Down. But what makes him truly terrifying, what makes him such an effective villain, is that he's psychological. He invades people's minds. He shows them their worst memories, their deepest traumas, their most carefully buried guilt and shame. He weaponizes their own pain against them, using their psychological wounds as doorways into their consciousness. We saw this with Chrissy, with Fred, with Patrick, and most devastatingly with Max. He didn't just kill them or try to kill them. He tortured them first, trapped them in their own minds, forced them to relive and confront the things they were most afraid of. That's his method, that's how he operates, and that's where Kaylee's powers could be absolutely crucial, potentially the key to everything. Kaylee can create illusions, incredibly realistic ones, that are virtually indistinguishable from reality to the people experiencing them. She can make you see whatever she wants you to see, believe whatever she wants you to believe. In her episode, we saw her create the illusion of Brenner, making a random man appear to Eleven as Papa, triggering all of Eleven's trauma and rage. We saw her make a building appear to be on fire when it wasn't. We saw her create phantom people and make real people disappear from perception. Her abilities are all about manipulating perception, about controlling what people experience as real. And crucially, her powers work best when she focuses on her anger, on her pain, on the intense emotions that drive her need for revenge. In many ways, her abilities mirror Vecna's but from the opposite direction. He enters your mind and shows you horrible things. She makes you see beautiful or terrifying things from outside. Where he attacks, she defends or deflects. Where he reveals trauma, she could potentially hide it or counter it with different visions. So imagine this scenario. The final battle is underway. Vecna is attacking the team psychologically, trying to trap them in their own minds the way he trapped Max. 11 is trying to fight him head-on with her powers, but his psychological attacks are too effective, too targeted. She's strong enough to resist for a while, but eventually even she starts to falter under the weight of all the trauma she's carrying, all the guilt about opening the first gate, about creating Vecna by sending Henry to the Upside Down, about all the people who've died because of her connection to this nightmare. And just when it seems like Vecna is about to win, Kaylee arrives. She uses her illusion powers to counter Vecna's mental attacks, to show the team visions of hope and strength instead of pain and despair. She helps Max fight her way out of the coma by creating a pathway through the darkness, a vision of her friends calling her back. She protects Lucas and Dustin and everyone else from falling under Vecna's curse, creating mental shields or decoys that confuse him, make it harder for him to target specific people. This type of team-up would be incredibly powerful, both as action spectacle and as character development. It would show Eleven that she doesn't have to carry this burden alone, that there are others like her, others with powers who can fight alongside her. It would redeem Kaylee's character by giving her a genuinely heroic moment, showing that her powers aren't just for revenge, but can be used to save people, to protect the innocent. And it would make the Lost Sister episode retroactively more important, proving that it wasn't filler after all, but rather an introduction to a character who would become crucial in the final battle. The Duffers have hinted repeatedly that Season 5 will require everyone to work together, that it won't just be the main cast, but everyone who's been touched by this story, everyone who's been affected by the Upside Down's influence, and that absolutely should include the other survivors of Hawkins' lab, the other children who suffered under Brenner's experiments, and who have every right to be part of stopping the monster that Program created. Kaylee also represents a different approach to power, a different philosophy about what it means to have these abilities. While Eleven was taught to use her powers as a weapon, trained from infancy to obey Brenner and the government, Kaylee learned to use hers for survival and eventually for vengeance. She escaped the lab somehow, we still don't know exactly how, and she's been living on her own terms ever since, making her own choices, even if those choices have sometimes been violent or morally questionable. That contrast between Eleven and Kali could be powerful in the final season, could lead to interesting conflicts and growth for both characters. Maybe Eleven needs to learn from Kali's approach, needs to embrace some of the anger and assertiveness that Kaylee represents. Maybe she needs to stop seeing herself as a weapon or a protector and start seeing herself as a person with agency, with the right to be angry about what was done to her. Or maybe, in a beautiful reversal that would show both characters growing, Kaylee needs to learn from Eleven about using power to protect rather than to punish, about building something positive instead of just destroying the people who hurt you. Their reunion, if it happens, could be one of the emotional high points of Season 5. Two sisters, not by blood, but by shared trauma and shared abilities, who barely knew each other when they were younger, brought back together by the apocalypse threatening their world. They could talk about their experiences, share what they've learned, process their trauma together in a way neither could do alone. And then they could fight side by side, combining their powers in creative and unexpected ways to take down the ultimate product of Brenner's experiments. That would be satisfying on so many levels, would feel like justice being served, the children Brenner tortured coming together to destroy the monster his ambitions unleashed. There's another fascinating angle to Kali's potential return that's been discussed extensively on Reddit and other fan communities, one that's darker and more complicated. What if Kali didn't actually escape the Rainbow Room massacre on her own? What if Henry Creel let her go, or even helped her escape? This theory has gained traction because the logistics of Kaylee's escape have never made sense when you think about them carefully. And the security at Hawkins' lab was incredibly strict, almost paranoid. Armed guards everywhere, multiple checkpoints, surveillance cameras, locked doors requiring special clearance. The entire facility was designed to keep the numbered children contained, to prevent escapes at all costs, because these kids were too valuable and too dangerous to lose. So how does a child, even one with the power to create illusions, fool an entire facility of trained guards and armed security personnel and escape? Yes, she can make people see things that aren't there or not see things that are there. But the lab would have had protocols for dealing with psychic abilities. They would have known about her specific power set and taken precautions against it. She would have needed to fool multiple people simultaneously and maintain those illusions while moving through the facility, find an exit, and escape into the outside world, where she'd have to immediately disappear to avoid being recaptured. It's not impossible, certainly. Cully is clever, and her powers are formidable, but it seems improbable that a child could pull off such a complex escape entirely on her own. The theory is that Henry saw something in Cully, some usefulness in her powers, that made him want to preserve her, or at least not actively kill her the way he killed everyone else. Maybe he recognized that her illusion abilities could be valuable to him somehow. Maybe he saw her as a kindred spirit, another child who understood being different and dangerous. Maybe he specifically helped her escape, or at least allowed it to happen as part of his larger plan to take down Brenner and Hawkins' lab. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Kaylee's true loyalties and her connection to the overall story. Is she somehow still connected to Vecna even now? Does he have any influence over her, any ability to manipulate her or see through her eyes? Could he use her as a weapon against Eleven and the others, either by controlling her directly or by exploiting their connection? When Kaylee returns in Season 5, will she be an ally, or could she potentially be compromised, working for Vecna without even realizing it? These are dark possibilities that would make her return much more complex and morally ambiguous than a simple reunion and team-up. It would also explain why the Duffers might have kept her absent for so long. If there's a twist coming related to Kaylee, if her role in the story is more complicated than just being Eleven's sister and ally, then they needed to keep her off screen to maintain that surprise. Bringing her back too early would have either spoiled the reveal or forced them to waste time justifying why she wasn't helping earlier. Season 5's episode titles were revealed in November of 2024, generating enormous buzz in the fan community as everyone tried to decode what each title might mean for the plot. And one of them immediately caught everyone's attention and sparked intense speculation. Episode 4 is called Sorcerer. Now that title could refer to many things within the Stranger Things universe. It could be about Vecna, who certainly qualifies as a sorcerer with his reality warping powers, his ability to curse people from a distance, his command over the creatures of the Upside Down. It could be about Will and his mysterious connection to the Upside Down that's been present since the very beginning, since he was the first person taken there and the only person to survive, extended exposure to that dimension. It could be a Dungeons and Dragons reference, perhaps the kids using that game's framework to understand how to defeat Vecna the same way they used it to make sense of the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer in earlier seasons. But many fans immediately thought of Kaylee when they saw that title. She's the only character whose powers feel explicitly magical rather than scientific or biological, while 11 and the other test subjects have psychic abilities that could theoretically be explained through neuroscience or paranormal psychology. Kaylee's illusion powers feel like something out of fantasy fiction, like spells or enchantments, rather than telepathy or telekinesis. She creates things out of thin air, makes people see impossible things, warps reality itself through force of will and imagination. If anyone in the Stranger Things universe deserves to be called a sorcerer, it's 8. So could Sorcerer be a Kaylee-centric episode? Could this be where she finally returns to the main story after being absent for 3 full seasons? If so, it would give the Duffers a chance to properly redeem that Season 2 Chicago detour by bringing her back in a meaningful way, fully integrated into the main plot rather than as a side quest or divergent storyline. It would allow them to explore what she's been doing for the past 3 years of Showtime, which covers roughly 5 or 6 years in universe given the time jumps between seasons. Has she continued her vendetta against former Hawkins Lab employees, tracking them down one by one and making them pay for what they did? Has she been gathering more followers, building her found family into something larger and more organized? Or has she been preparing for this exact moment, knowing somehow that eventually the lab's darkest secrets would come back to threaten the entire world, positioning herself to be ready to help when the time came? The Duffers have also strongly suggested that Season 5 will return to the Rainbow Room, the training facility where the numbered children learned to use their powers. This setting is crucial for understanding the origins of both 11 and Vecna. And if we're returning there, whether through flashbacks or through some present-day supernatural means, it would make perfect sense for Kaylee to be involved. After all, she trained in that same room. She knows its secrets. She might have memories or information that could help defeat Vecna. Maybe she remembers something about Henry before he became one, something that could reveal a weakness. Or maybe the Rainbow Room itself holds some key, some artifact or location that requires multiple psychic individuals to access. We've seen throughout the series that Eleven's powers, while immense, have limits. Maybe defeating Vecna requires a combination of psychic abilities, Eleven's raw power combined with Kaylee's illusions, and possibly the powers of other survivors we haven't met yet. There's also the practical matter of representation and character development. Kaylee was one of the few characters of color in the main cast, and her story was left deeply unfinished. She's still out there, still carrying trauma, still seeking justice or vengeance for what was done to her. Stranger Things has always been about found family, about broken people coming together to face impossible odds. Kali deserves to be part of that family in the end. She deserves redemption, growth, and closure just as much as any other character. And from a storytelling perspective, her powers are simply too useful to ignore in the final battle. The Duffers would be foolish not to bring back a character who can manipulate reality itself. In a fight against someone like Vecna, who also manipulates reality through his curse, Kali's abilities aren't just useful, they're potentially essential. So while nothing has been officially confirmed, all signs point to Linnea Berthelsen returning as Kaylee in Season 5, and honestly, If she doesn't appear, it will be one of the biggest missed opportunities in the entire series. Beyond Kaylee, there's a larger question that Season 5 needs to address. What happened to the other numbered children? We know that there were at least 18 test subjects in Brenner's program. We've seen or heard about one who became Vecna. We know 2 through 7 existed because we see their bodies in the Rainbow Room after the massacre. We've met 8 Kaylee. We know 9 and 10 existed. And of course, we've followed 11's journey from the beginning. But what about the others? What about 12 through 18, or even higher numbers? Did Brenner stop at 11, or were there more children after her? This is one of the great unsolved mysteries of Stranger Things, and Season 5 is the last chance to explore it. Now, there have been tie-in materials, comics, and novels that have briefly touched on other numbered children. In particular, there's a comic series called Stranger Things 6 that tells the story of a girl named Francine who was numbered 6 in Brenner's program. The comics show her escaping the lab and trying to build a normal life while being hunted by government agents. They're compelling stories, but here's the thing. The comics aren't officially canon to the show. The Duffers have made it clear that the show is the primary continuity, and anything in other media might be contradicted by what appears on screen. In fact, Season 4's flashbacks did contradict some elements from the comics. So we can't assume that 6 or any other characters from tie-in materials will appear or even be referenced in Season 5. However, that doesn't mean other numbered children won't show up. The Duffers have specifically said that Season 5 will bring back basically every character from the show's history in some capacity. And if we're getting extensive Rainbow Room flashbacks, we'll likely see some of the other test subjects, even if just briefly. There's a compelling theory that one or more of the numbered children survived the 1979 massacre and has been living in hiding ever since, just like Kaylee did. Think about it. We only saw certain areas of Hawkins' lab during that flashback sequence. What if some children were in different wings or different facilities when one went on his rampage? What if Brenner had already moved some of them to satellite locations for specialized training? If there are other survivors out there, they would be incredibly powerful allies in the fight against Vecna. They would have abilities that might complement or enhance what 11 and potentially Kali can do. And they would have personal motivation to stop one. He killed their friends, their fellow test subjects. He's the reason they've had to live in fear and hiding for years. The final battle could become a reunion of Brenner's experiments, all the children he tortured coming together to stop the monster he created. Another possibility that fans have discussed extensively is the idea of the Russian numbers. We know from Season 3 that the Soviet Union was running its own experiments, trying to replicate what Brenner achieved. They were attempting to open their own gate to the Upside Down beneath the Starcourt Mall. In Season 4, we learned they had captured creatures from the Upside Down and were using them as weapons. So it stands to reason they might have also tried to create their own psychic soldiers. What if there's a Russian equivalent to 11 somewhere? What if the USSR kidnapped some of Brenner's test subjects or obtained his research and started their own program? This would open up fascinating possibilities. Russian psychics with potentially hostile intentions, either working with or against the Hawkins crew, adding an extra layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. The practical reality is that introducing entirely new, numbered children at this late stage would be challenging from a storytelling perspective. Season 5 has a lot to wrap up. Introducing new powered characters would require explanation, backstory, relationship building. The Duffers have said this final season will focus on bringing the core cast back together, making it feel like Season 1 again, where everyone was united in Hawkins. Adding too many new faces could dilute that focus. So if we do see other numbered children, it will likely be in a limited capacity. Perhaps they appear in flashbacks to fill out the Rainbow Room scenes, giving us a better sense of the scope of Brenner's program and the tragedy of what one did. Perhaps one or two appear briefly in the present day, either to deliver important information or to make a heroic sacrifice. Or perhaps, and this is the darkest possibility, we discover that Vecna has been hunting down and killing the other survivors of Brenner's program, eliminating anyone who might pose a threat to his plans. This would raise the stakes considerably and give our heroes even more reason to stop him. From a thematic standpoint, exploring the other numbered children could reinforce one of Stranger Things' core messages. These children were victims, stolen from their families, tortured in the name of science and national security. They deserve justice. They deserve acknowledgement. Season 5 could honor that by showing us, even briefly, what happened to the others, confirming that they haven't been forgotten by the narrative. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Even a simple scene of Eleven finding files or photographs of the other children, learning their names, their faces, their stories, would be powerful. It would remind us that Eleven isn't unique in her suffering. She's one of many. And that shared trauma could be what ultimately gives her the strength to end this nightmare once and for all. So while we probably won't see a full roster of new powered characters joining the fight in Season 5, I do expect we'll learn more about what happened to Brenner's other test subjects. And if we're very lucky, maybe, just maybe, one or two of them will appear to help Eleven when she needs it most. Let's talk about Barb. Barbara Holland, played by Shannon Purser, is one of the most fascinating cases in all of Stranger Things history. She appeared in only a few episodes of Season 1 before being killed by the Demogorgon, and yet she became a cultural phenomenon. The Justice for Barb movement that erupted after Season 1 was unlike anything the Duffers had anticipated. Fans felt that Barb's death was treated too casually by the show, that she deserved more acknowledgement, more mourning, more meaning. The outcry was so intense that it actually influenced how the Duffers wrote Season 2. They gave Barb's parents a storyline, showing them still searching for their daughter, hiring Murray to investigate. They had Nancy fight to expose the truth about Barb's death, to give the Hollands some closure. But even then, many fans felt it wasn't enough. And now, years later, with Season 5 approaching, it appears Barb is finally getting her moment. In October of 2025, Time magazine was given exclusive access to the Season 5 set, and they reported seeing something unexpected. A dummy of Barb's body, half buried in upside-down tunnels, covered in inky black vines, with a giant bleeding gash on her neck. The description is haunting. It's been years since Barb died in that pool at Steve's house, years since her body was left in the Upside Down. And apparently, in season 5, we're finally going to see what's become of her remains. Shannon Purser herself attended the season 5 premiere event, which immediately sparked speculation. She confirmed to reporters that her body will appear in the new season, though she was careful about saying much beyond that. The question everyone's asking is, why now? Why bring Barb back even as a corpse in the final season? What purpose does it serve narratively? The most obvious answer relates to Nancy. Nancy Wheeler has carried guilt about Barb's death since season 1. That guilt was weaponized by Vecna in season 4 when he trapped Nancy in his curse. He showed her Barb's corpse, blamed her for not protecting her best friend, told her that she had forgotten about Barb and moved on. And while Nancy escaped that vision, it's clear the trauma remains. Seeing Barb's actual body in the Upside Down in season 5 could be Nancy's final confrontation with that guilt. Maybe the characters need to venture into the Upside Down tunnels for some reason, and they come across Barb's remains. For Nancy, this would be devastating, but also potentially cathartic. She could finally say goodbye. She could finally process the grief she's been pushing down for years. It could be a powerful moment of closure for both Nancy and the audience. There's also a larger thematic reason to show Barb's body. The Upside Down is full of victims. It's not just a scary alternate dimension, it's a graveyard. Everyone who was taken there and killed, their bodies remain, preserved by whatever strange properties that dimension possesses. Showing Barb's corpse drives home the real cost of what's been happening in Hawkins. These aren't just abstract threats. These are people's lives destroyed, bodies left to rot in a nightmare dimension. If the final season is going to properly address the scale of the tragedy, acknowledging all the victims, then Barb absolutely needs to be included. She was the first person we really mourned in this series. Honoring her in the finale feels right. Now there are some wilder theories floating around online about Barb's return. Some fans speculated that because Shannon Purser attended the premiere, maybe Barb will appear in more than just body form. Could there be flashbacks showing more of her friendship with Nancy before the tragic night at Steve's house? Possibly. That would give emotional weight to Nancy's arc without requiring any supernatural resurrection. We could see scenes of them in happier times, contrasted with the grim reality of finding her body in the present. Or, and this is much darker, could Vecna animate Barb's corpse somehow? We've seen the Upside Down creatures do strange things. We know Vecna can manipulate perceptions and create visions. What if he uses Barb's body as a psychological weapon against Nancy, making her think her friend has somehow returned, only to reveal it as a cruel trick? That would be absolutely brutal, but it would fit with Vecna's methods. There's also been speculation about a larger pattern of returns. Some fans on Reddit have theorized that all the people who died in or because of the Upside Down could be resurrected as Vecna's servants in the final battle, an army of the dead controlled by the Mind Flayer's hive mind. This would be similar to what we saw with Billy in Season 3 when he was flayed, except more tragic, because these would be people who've been dead for years. Barb leading a charge of upside-down zombies against our heroes would be horrifying and heartbreaking in equal measure. I don't think this theory is likely, honestly. It feels a bit too dark, even for Stranger Things, and it would undermine the emotional weight of these deaths. But it's certainly a possibility that has the fan community talking. What seems most probable is that Barb's appearance in season 5 will be brief but meaningful. Her body will be discovered, probably during a mission into the Upside Down. Nancy will have a moment to grieve, to apologize, to say goodbye. It will be painful but necessary. And perhaps, in finding Barb, the characters will also find something else. Maybe Barb's body is near a crucial location. Maybe where she died is actually significant to understanding the Upside Down or Vecna's plans. That would give her death additional meaning beyond just being a tragic loss. It would make her, in a strange way, part of the solution. The Duffers have always said they regretted not giving Barb more attention in the earlier seasons. They've admitted that Netflix kept pushing them to address the Barb phenomenon, and they eventually realized the fans were right. Season 5 is their last chance to truly do justice to this character, and based on everything we've heard, it seems they're taking that opportunity seriously. So yes, Barb is returning. Her body will appear. And for fans who've been demanding justice for Barb since 2016, this might finally be the closure they've been seeking. Bob Newby, played by Sean Astin, was one of the most beloved characters in Stranger Things Season 2. He was Joyce's boyfriend, a Radio Shack manager with a kind heart and dorky enthusiasm. He dreamed of taking Joyce and her boys away from Hawkins to start fresh somewhere new. He bonded with Will over their shared love of science fiction and technology. He was gentle, patient, and genuinely good in a show where so many characters are complicated or morally gray. And then, in Season 2's penultimate episode, he died heroically, sacrificing himself to save Joyce, Hopper, Will, and the others from the demodogs that had overrun Hawkins' lab. His death was absolutely devastating. Joyce watched the man she loved get torn apart mere feet away from safety. It was brutal and heartbreaking, and it established that Stranger Things was willing to kill off genuinely good people to raise the stakes. Bob has appeared in the show since his death, but only in flashbacks. Season 3 included some brief footage of him and Joyce together in happier times, reminding us of what she lost. And there's been hope among some fans that Season 5 might give us more of those flashback moments, maybe showing earlier scenes from Bob and Joyce's relationship that we never got to see. However, Sean Astin himself has been pretty clear that he doesn't expect to return for the final season, and he's explained exactly why. At LA Comic Con, he joked that whenever fans ask if he'll be in Season 5, he always responds the same way: "No, I'm dead." But he went further, addressing the idea of flashbacks specifically. He said that even a happy flashback of Bob with Joyce wouldn't make sense because Season 5 is focused on Joyce and Hopper's relationship. Showing Joyce happy with Bob would potentially undermine that dynamic, would make viewers question why Joyce moved on so quickly, or whether Hopper is really the right person for her. From a storytelling perspective, Astin makes a compelling point. Bob's death was tragic, but complete. His arc was full. He helped save people he cared about, and he died a hero. Bringing him back, even in flashback, might actually diminish the impact of that sacrifice. It would be just another scene of Bob being his usual wonderful self, which we've already seen, unless the flashback revealed something new, some crucial piece of information that Bob knew or experienced that's relevant to defeating Vecna. It wouldn't serve much purpose beyond fan service, and the Duffers have always been careful about not leaning too heavily on fan service when it compromises the story they're trying to tell. However, there is one scenario where Bob could appear in Season 5 that wouldn't violate these principles: Vecna. Just as he used Billy to torment Max in Season 4, showing her twisted visions of her dead brother, Vecna could use Bob to attack Joyce psychologically. Imagine Joyce falling under Vecna's curse, trapped in her own mind, and Bob appears. But it's not really Bob, it's Vecna wearing Bob's face, using her love and grief as a weapon against her. Bob could say terrible things, blame Joyce for his death, tell her she should have done more to save him. Or worse, he could be kind and loving, reminding her of what she lost, making her want to give up, to stay in this false vision of happiness, rather than fight her way back to reality. This type of appearance would justify bringing Sean Astin back for Season 5. It would be new material that serves the plot, puts Joyce's character through an important test, and doesn't undermine her relationship with Hopper. In fact, it could strengthen that relationship. Maybe Hopper is the one who pulls Joyce out of the vision, his voice or presence reminding her that she has someone to fight for in the present, not just memories of the past. That would be a powerful moment and a fitting way to honor Bob's character while also advancing the story. There's also the possibility of Bob appearing through the Stranger Things prequel play, The First Shadow, which explores the backgrounds of several characters, including Bob, Joyce, and Hopper as teenagers. The play has revealed that Bob was in love with Joyce even back in high school, but he never said anything because he thought she had feelings for Hopper. This adds tragic dimension to Bob's story in the series. He spent years waiting, finally got his chance with Joyce, and then died just as they were planning a future together. If Season 5 includes any scenes set in the past, referencing events from the play, we might see a younger version of Bob, possibly played by someone else, or with Astin digitally de-aged. This seems like a long shot, but it's not impossible. The reality is that Bob's story is complete. He was never meant to be a long-term character. In fact, originally the Duffers planned to kill him off much earlier in Season 2. He was supposed to die in Episode 3 with Will, possessed by the Mind Flayer, killing him in the car. But Sean Astin's performance and the character's likability kept getting his death delayed until finally it happened in Episode 8. That speaks to how special Bob was. Even the writers didn't want to let him go. But they did, and his death meant something. It raised the stakes. It showed that no one was safe. It gave Joyce a loss that motivated her actions in Season 3 and beyond. Undoing that, or dwelling on it too much in Season 5, would be a disservice to what they achieved with his character. So while I would love to see Sean Astin reprise the role one more time, even just for a scene or two, I respect his position that Bob's story is done. If we get a brief Vecna-induced vision, fantastic. If not, Bob Newby, superhero, will be remembered as one of the great supporting characters in Stranger Things history, someone who proved that even ordinary people can be heroes when it matters most. Billy Hargrove, played by Dacre Montgomery, is one of the most complex and controversial characters in Stranger Things. Introduced in Season 2 as Max's abusive stepbrother, he was violent, racist, and deeply unpleasant. But Season 3 peeled back layers, showing us that Billy's cruelty came from his own trauma, years of abuse from his father. And then, in the Season 3 finale, Billy achieved redemption through sacrifice. While possessed by the Mind Flayer, he managed to break free at the last moment and gave his life to protect Eleven and the others from the monster, dying in Max's arms. It was one of the most emotional moments in the entire series, a character we'd been conditioned to hate, revealing that somewhere inside, buried under years of pain, there was still someone worth saving. Billy appeared again in Season 4, but not in the flesh. When Max was trapped in Vecna's curse, the villain used Billy to torment her, showing her visions of her dead brother, blaming her for not mourning him properly, twisting her guilt and grief into weapons. It was haunting, with Dacre Montgomery delivering a chilling performance as this twisted version of Billy, colder and more vicious than even the living Billy had been. That scene in the graveyard, with Max visiting Billy's grave while running up that hill played, became one of the most iconic moments in the entire series. So naturally, fans wondered if Billy might appear again in Season 5. However, Dacre Montgomery has now confirmed that he will not be returning. In an interview promoting his film, We Went Up the Hill, he stated plainly, "I'm not in the last season, unfortunately." He didn't leave much room for interpretation or speculation. Billy's story, he believes, is complete. And honestly, as much as I love Dacre Montgomery's performance, I think he's right. Billy's arc was perfectly crafted. He went from antagonist to victim to hero, and his death had meaning. It catalyzed Max's Season 4 storyline, her grief over Billy, her guilt about their complicated relationship, her regret that she couldn't save him, that became the emotional core of her character in Season 4. Vecna recognized that and exploited it. If Billy were to appear again in Season 5, what would that scene accomplish that we haven't already seen? We've had the heartbreaking death. We've had the haunting vision. We've had Max coming to terms with her loss. Bringing Billy back again, even just in another vision, might feel repetitive at this point. However, there is one scenario I can imagine where Billy's return would make sense. Max is currently in a coma, her mind trapped somewhere between life and death. Eleven is keeping her alive somehow, but Max's consciousness is missing. When the characters search for her mind in Season 5, when they try to bring her back, they might enter some sort of psychic realm or shared consciousness space, and there they might encounter Billy. Not as a villain or a trick, but as a genuine spiritual presence, perhaps acting as a guide to help them find Max, or as a guardian protecting her in whatever liminal space she's trapped in. This would honor Billy's redemption, showing that his sacrifice in Season 3 truly changed him, that even in death he's trying to protect his sister. It would also give Max a chance to talk to Billy one more time, to say things she never got to say when he was alive. That would be emotionally powerful and wouldn't feel like retreading old ground. Billy's gravestone has appeared multiple times in promotional materials for Season 5, suggesting that his death and Max's grief will remain relevant themes. There's even been debate among eagle-eyed fans about the gravestone itself. In Season 4, it read William Hargrove in some shots and Billy Hargrove in others, creating confusion about what his legal name actually was. The Season 5 trailer appears to use Billy, which most fans prefer since that's how he was known throughout the series. This attention to detail suggests the Duffers care about Billy's legacy, about making sure his presence is still felt, even if the character doesn't appear. There's also the thematic element to consider. Billy represents one of Stranger Things' most important messages. Hurt people hurt people. Billy was a victim before he was a victimizer. His father's abuse created the monster that Max feared. But underneath that, there was still a scared kid who just wanted to be loved, who remembered surfing in California with his mom before she left him alone with his abuser. Season 5 could echo that theme through other characters. Maybe someone on the team has to be willing to save an enemy, to see past the surface cruelty to the wounded person underneath. That would honor Billy's memory without needing to bring the actor back for another appearance. The fan community remains divided on Billy. Some people think he got exactly the redemption he deserved, and his story is perfect as is. Others feel like his one heroic moment doesn't erase the terrible things he did, particularly to Lucas, and that the show gave him more sympathy than he earned. Still others believe Billy deserved more, that we should have gotten more time to see him trying to change and make amends before he died. These debates speak to how well the character was written and performed. Billy felt real. His pain felt real. His cruelty felt real. And his moment of heroism felt earned, at least to many viewers, because we had seen enough humanity in him to believe it was always there, just buried deep. So while Dacre Montgomery won't be filming new scenes for Season 5, Billy Hargrove's impact on the story, particularly on Max, will undoubtedly continue to be felt. And perhaps that's the best way to honor the character, not by bringing him back repeatedly, which would cheapen his death, but by showing how his sacrifice changed the people who loved him, how even someone as flawed as Billy could ultimately matter, could ultimately make a difference. That's a powerful message, and it's one that Season 5 can explore without needing the actor to return. Sixter Eddie Munson, the hero's fate. Eddie Munson, played by Joseph Quinn, was the breakout character of Season 4. The Metallica-loving, D&D-playing, drug-dealing metalhead became an instant fan favorite. He was funny, genuine, and surprisingly heroic. When Chrissy died in his trailer, he was hunted by the entire town as a satanic cult leader and murderer. But instead of running away and hiding, he chose to help the team fight Vecna, even though it put him in constant danger. And in the Season 4 finale, Eddie made the ultimate sacrifice. He stayed behind in the Upside Down, playing Master of Puppets on his guitar to lure the Demobats away from the Creel house, giving Nancy, Steve, and Robin time to attack Vecna. He fought off the swarm of bats as long as he could, and when they overwhelmed him, he died knowing he was finally a hero, not a coward. Dustin held him as he bled out, and Eddie's last words were about finally not running away. It was heartbreaking and beautiful, a perfect ending for a character who'd spent the entire season running from his demons, both literal and figurative. But fans couldn't let go. Joseph Quinn's charisma and the character's tragic death sparked an intense campaign to bring Eddie back somehow. Theories emerged. Maybe he wasn't really dead. Maybe the Upside Down would resurrect him. Maybe he would come back as Kaz the vampire from D&D lore, a dark servant of Vecna who ultimately betrays and destroys his master. The theories got so elaborate and widespread that for over 2 years, the question of whether Eddie would return in Season 5 dominated Stranger Things discussions online. Joseph Quinn himself seemed to enjoy teasing fans, giving vague answers in interviews about whether he'd be back, keeping hope alive. But finally, in October of 2025, the Duffer Brothers gave a definitive answer. Eddie is not coming back. Matt Duffer told Empire magazine, "Joe Quinn is so busy anyway that everyone should know he's not coming back. He's shot like 5 movies since Stranger Things. When the hell has he got time to come and shoot Stranger Things? No, sadly, RIP, he's fully under that ground. That statement is about as clear as you can get. Eddie Munson is dead, and he's staying dead. And while I understand the disappointment from fans who loved the character, I actually think this is the right call. Eddie's death meant something. It was the culmination of his arc. He spent the entire season being called a freak, a coward, a devil worshiper, a murderer. His entire life, he'd been looked down on, judged for his appearance and interests. But in the end, he proved everyone wrong. He was brave, he was selfless, he was a hero. Bringing him back would undermine all of that. It would make his sacrifice feel temporary, less meaningful. The same issue that applies to bringing back Bob applies even more to Eddie. His death needs to stay dead for it to have impact. Moreover, Eddie isn't as central to the core cast as some of the other characters we've discussed. He was in 1 season. He formed a deep bond with Dustin, certainly, and his death will affect Dustin in Season 5. But he doesn't have the same history with the Hawkins crew that someone like Billy has with Max. So while Billy could theoretically appear in Max's coma visions because their relationship spans years and is deeply complicated, Eddie appearing in Dustin's mind would feel more forced. Dustin knew Eddie for a few weeks at most. Their friendship was real and meaningful, but it was also brief. There is, however, one way Eddie could appear in Season 5 without his death being undone or diminished: archival footage and flashbacks. We saw this with Bob in Season 3, where previously unaired scenes of him and Joyce were shown in flashback to remind us of what she'd lost. Season 5 could do something similar with Eddie. Maybe we see a flashback to Dustin and Eddie's D&D sessions before everything went wrong. Maybe we see Eddie and Chrissy interacting before her death, giving more context to why she went to him for drugs, showing that there was genuine kindness between them. These scenes would honor Eddie's character without requiring Joseph Quinn to return for new filming. They could be brief moments that add emotional weight to other characters' arcs, particularly Dustin's. We know that Dustin is going to be struggling in Season 5. He lost Eddie. He's probably dealing with guilt, wondering if there was anything he could have done differently. A flashback or a memory of Eddie telling him something meaningful could help Dustin find the strength to keep fighting. That would be a beautiful way to keep Eddie's presence in the show without compromising the finality of his death. The other possibility is that Eddie is mentioned, his legacy discussed. When the town of Hawkins learns the truth about what really happened, about the Upside Down and Vecna and all of it, maybe Eddie's name is cleared. Maybe Dustin makes sure people know that Eddie Munson wasn't a murderer, that he was a hero who gave his life to save the world. That would give Dustin closure and honor Eddie's memory. It would show that even though Eddie is gone, what he did mattered. The Hellfire Club could continue in his name. Kids who were outcast and bullied, like Eddie was, could find community and acceptance through D&D, the game Eddie loved. That would be a fitting legacy, more meaningful than any resurrection could be. So while Eddie Munson won't be returning to Stranger Things in the flesh, his impact on the story, particularly on Dustin, will remain. And for fans who loved him, the best way to honor Eddie is to remember what he represented. Standing up for the people society rejects. Finding courage when it matters most. Not running away when things get hard. Those are the lessons Eddie taught, and those lessons will live on in Season 5 and beyond, even if the character himself is gone. Terry Ives, played by Amy Mullins, is one of the most tragic figures in the Stranger Things universe. She's Eleven's biological mother, a woman who was subjected to Brenner's experiments while pregnant, who tried desperately to rescue her baby from Hawkins' lab, and who was ultimately rendered catatonic by electroshock therapy as punishment for her efforts. When we meet Terry in Season 2, she's trapped in her own mind, repeating the same words and images over and over. Breathe, sunflower, rainbow, 450, 3 to the right, 4 to the left. It's heartbreaking. Eleven was able to access her mother's memories through her powers, learning the truth about her birth and Brenner's cruelty. But she couldn't bring Terry back to reality. Her mother has remained in this vegetative state ever since, cared for by her sister Becky. For 3 seasons now, Terry has been absent from the show, not even mentioned in passing. But Season 5, as the final chapter, needs to address her fate. Eleven deserves closure with her mother, and Terry deserves more than to be forgotten by the narrative. There are several ways Season 5 could bring Terry back into the story. The first is the simplest. Eleven visits her mother one final time, maybe after everything is over, after Vecna is defeated and Hawkins is saved. Eleven goes to see Terry and tells her everything that happened. She tells her mother about the family she found, about Hopper adopting her, about Mike and her friends, and all the adventures and battles. And even though Terry can't respond, even though she's still trapped in her own mind, maybe Eleven senses that some part of her mother can hear her, can understand. That would be a quiet, emotional scene that gives Eleven closure and honors Terry's importance to the story. The second possibility is more dramatic. What if Eleven's powers have grown strong enough that she can finally heal her mother's mind? We know that Eleven's abilities have expanded throughout the series. She closed gates, brought Max back from death, connected with people across vast distances. What if, in the final season, she learns that she can repair psychological damage, can literally heal the trauma that Brenner's electroshock therapy inflicted? This would be incredibly powerful. Imagine Eleven placing her hands on her mother's head, entering her mind, and painstakingly putting the broken pieces back together. It would be a long, difficult process. Maybe she has to relive her mother's trauma to understand it, to fix it. But in the end, Terry wakes up. She's herself again. And for the first time in Eleven's conscious life, she gets to actually talk to her mother, to hear her voice, to be held by her. That reunion would be one of the most emotional moments in the entire series. There's also a theory that's been discussed in fan communities about Terry having powers of her own. In Season 2, we briefly saw Terry using telekinesis to change the TV channel, and she got a nosebleed afterwards, just like Eleven does when she uses her abilities. This suggested that Terry wasn't just a vessel for Brenner's experiments. She actually developed powers herself from the drugs and procedures she was subjected to. If that's true, and if Eleven can wake her up, then Terry could potentially help in the fight against Vecna. Two psychically powerful women, mother and daughter, working together. That would be beautiful and thematically appropriate. Terry spent her entire adult life trying to save Eleven from Brenner. Now finally, she could help Eleven finish what Brenner started, help her daughter defeat the ultimate product of those experiments, Henry Creel, who became Vecna. However, this scenario seems less likely simply because it would require a lot of screen time to set up and execute. And Season 5 has so much else to cover. The darkest possibility is that Terry dies in Season 5, and Eleven has to let her go. Maybe Eleven visits her mother and realizes that there's nothing left to save, that the person Terry was is truly gone. Or maybe Terry's body is failing after years in this catatonic state, and Eleven has to make the heartbreaking decision to let her pass peacefully rather than keeping her alive in torment. This would be incredibly sad, but it would force Eleven to truly grieve, to let go of the fantasy of ever having a normal relationship with her biological mother. It would also reinforce that Eleven's real family isn't defined by blood. It's Joyce, Hopper, Will, Jonathan, Mike, and all her friends. That's who she comes home to when this is all over. Still, I hope the Duffers find a more hopeful ending for Terry. She deserves peace, and Eleven deserves at least the chance to connect with her mother before the series ends. The Stranger Things writers revealed on social media that they considered having Eleven Mercy kill Terry back in Season 2, putting her out of her misery. They decided against it, and I'm glad they did. But that does raise the question of whether they might revisit that idea in Season 5. Would Eleven be willing to let her mother die if that was the most compassionate option? It's a heavy moral question, the kind that Stranger Things has always been willing to explore. One detail that could become relevant in Season 5 is Eleven's father. We've never learned who Terry's boyfriend was, who got her pregnant. The tie-in novel Suspicious Minds suggests it was a man named Andrew Rich who died in Vietnam, drafted by Brenner specifically to remove him from Terry's life. But the books aren't officially canon, and the show has never confirmed this. There have been dark fan theories that Brenner himself is Eleven's father, or even that Henry Creel is, with Brenner using his DNA to impregnate Terry as part of his experiments. These theories are disturbing, but not impossible, and if true, they would be devastating revelations for Eleven to process in the final season. Imagine learning that your entire existence was a planned experiment, that you were literally created to be a weapon. That would be so much trauma layered on top of trauma. Eleven finding out the truth about her parentage, about why she was born, could be a major plot point. And having Terry wake up to confirm or deny these theories, to tell Eleven the truth about her father, would give their reunion additional weight. It's not just about reconnecting emotionally. It's about Eleven finally understanding her own origin story completely. So while we don't know for certain that Terry will appear in season 5, it would be a significant omission if she didn't. Eleven's journey has always been about identity, about finding out who she really is, beyond the powers and the experiments. Her mother is a crucial part of that story, and she deserves resolution before the series ends. Beyond the major character returns we've discussed, there are numerous other figures from Stranger Things past who could potentially appear in season 5. Some are more likely than others, but all of them have been the subject of fan speculation. Let's go through some of the most talked about possibilities. First, there's the Russian contingent. Dmitri, also called Enzo, and Yuri the smuggler both helped Hopper escape from the Soviet prison in season 4. Their fates were left somewhat ambiguous at the end of that season. Dmitri had lost everything: his position, his country, his family. Yuri was still looking out for himself, but had shown occasional flashes of humanity. Will they return in season 5? There haven't been any confirmed reports of the actors being on set, but it's possible they could appear briefly, perhaps providing information about what the Russian government knows about the Upside Down, or warning the Hawkins crew about some new threat. The Russians have been a consistent antagonistic force throughout the series, representing Cold War paranoia and government overreach. It would make sense to tie up their storyline in the finale. Then there's Argyle, Jonathan's stoner friend from California, played by Eduardo Franco. Argyle was a fan favorite in season 4, bringing much-needed comic relief and surprisingly wise stoner philosophy. However, Franco himself confirmed in early 2024 that he wasn't called back for season 5. He said, "I never got a phone call, so I think that's it." This makes sense from a storytelling perspective. Argyle was great, but he was primarily comic relief. He's not integral to the core emotional arcs or the supernatural plot. The Duffers probably felt that bringing him back would be more distraction than benefit. Though it would have been nice to see him one more time, if only to confirm that he's safe and his surfer bro outlook on life survived the apocalypse. Mr. Clark, the boys' science teacher from seasons 1 and 2, is another character who could make a return appearance. He's been absent for 2 seasons now, but Mr. Clark was always more than just a background character. He was the adult who encouraged the boys' curiosity, who helped them understand the science behind the strange things happening in Hawkins. With the town under military quarantine in season 5, with the Upside Down literally bleeding into our reality, you'd think the government would want to talk to the local science teacher who's been hearing about alternate dimensions from his students for years. Maybe Mr. Clark is brought in as a consultant, or maybe the kids seek him out for help understanding something about the Gates or Vecna's abilities. His return would be a nice callback to season 1 and would remind us of how much the characters have grown since they were kids, calling him on his radio for help with their D&D campaign. There's also Lonnie Byers, Will and Jonathan's deadbeat father, who appeared briefly in season 1 and hasn't been seen since. Lonnie was terrible. He abandoned his family, he was cruel to Will for being sensitive and artistic, and when Will went missing, Lonnie only showed up because he thought he could get money from a lawsuit. Jonathan literally punched him and told him to leave. But some fans have wondered if Lonnie might return in season 5, not because anyone wants to see him, but because it could create an interesting conflict. What if Lonnie hears about what's happening in Hawkins and shows up trying to take custody of Will, claiming he wants to protect his son, but really just seeing an opportunity to profit from the media attention? That would infuriate Joyce and put the family in a difficult position legally, even as they're trying to save the world. It would also give Jonathan a chance to definitively reject his father and choose the family he's built with Joyce, Will, and Hopper over his biological father, who was never there for him. However, this feels like it might be too much of a detour for the final season. Stranger Things needs to focus on the core conflicts, and a Lonnie subplot would pull attention away from the supernatural threats. The conspiracy theorist bloggers and journalists who appeared in earlier seasons are another possibility. Murray is obviously still a main character, but what about the reporters who were investigating Hawkins' lab in Season 2, or the Russian conspiracy theorists who helped decode the message in Season 3? Maybe in Season 5, with Hawkins under quarantine and the government trying to cover up what's really happening, we see journalists breaking the story, the truth finally getting out to the world. That would create a whole new dynamic. The Hawkins crew wouldn't just be fighting Vecna. They'd be dealing with media attention, with government agents trying to silence them, with the world watching. And wouldn't it be fitting if the people who've been called crazy for believing in conspiracies and alternate dimensions were the ones who finally got to say, "I told you so"? There have also been occasional fan theories about seeing certain characters' parents who've never appeared on screen. What about Mike's dad, Ted, who's been largely a non-entity throughout the series? What about Lucas and Erica's parents, who we've seen but don't really know? Season 5 takes place in Hawkins, with the entire town under military quarantine. That means the parents are going to be much more involved in what's happening. They can't be kept in the dark anymore when there's literally a rift to another dimension tearing through their town. So we might see much more of the Wheeler family, the Sinclair family, and other Hawkins parents reacting to the truth about what their kids have been dealing with for years. The wildest theories involve characters coming back in completely unexpected ways. There's a theory that the Upside Down could somehow resurrect people, that anyone who died there could potentially come back, twisted and changed. This would mean not just Barb and Eddie, but also Bob, who died in Hawkins' lab when it was infested with upside-down creatures, and Billy, who died from wounds inflicted by the Mind Flayer. If this theory is correct, Season 5 could feature a horrifying sequence where our heroes have to face corrupted versions of their dead loved ones, people who look familiar but are now servants of Vecna. This would be absolutely traumatic for the characters and the audience, but it would also be a powerful exploration of grief and the desire to hold on to people we've lost. Imagine Nancy having to destroy a zombified Barb, or Joyce having to defeat an upside-down version of Bob. That would be brutal but undeniably compelling television. Then there's the time travel theory. Loads of fans believe Season 5 will involve time manipulation somehow, given all the clock imagery associated with Vecna and the fact that the Upside Down is frozen in time on November 6th, 1983. If time travel is involved, we could potentially see any character from the show's past, even ones who are currently alive. We could see younger versions of the main cast. We could see the original Hawkins lab staff. We could see the moment when the first gate opened from a completely different perspective. Time travel would open up literally endless possibilities for cameos and returns. But it would also be incredibly complex to execute without creating plot holes or paradoxes. The Duffers have been pretty careful about avoiding overly complicated sci-fi concepts in favor of emotional storytelling, so I'm skeptical that time travel will be a major element. Linda Hamilton has been confirmed to join the cast of Season 5 in an undisclosed role, which has sparked intense speculation. Hamilton is a legendary actress, best known for playing Sarah Connor in the Terminator films. Her presence suggests a significant character, not just a one-scene cameo. Some fans think she might be playing an older version of Eleven from the future who's traveled back to help her younger self. Others think she could be playing a government official or military officer, someone with authority who either helps or hinders the Hawkins crew. There's even a wild theory that she's playing an older version of Terry, somehow restored to health. We won't know until Season 5 airs, but Hamilton's casting is one of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding the final season. Ultimately, the question of who returns in Season 5 isn't just about fan service or tying up loose ends. It's about emotional resonance. The characters who appear in the final season, whether in flashback, vision, or physical presence, should serve the story the Duffers are trying to tell. They should help our main characters grow, heal, or face their demons one last time. That's what makes a return meaningful, and based on everything we've heard from the Duffers, it sounds like they understand this. They're not just bringing people back for the sake of it. Every return will have purpose. Every face from the past will mean something. And there you have it, my dear friends. A comprehensive look at all the potential character returns in Stranger Things Season 5. From the confirmed appearances, like Dr. Brenner and the grim discovery of Barb's body, to the highly likely returns like Kaylee and Terry Ives, to the bittersweet confirmations that Eddie and Billy won't be coming back in any new capacity. This final season promises to be an emotional roller coaster, honoring the show's history while propelling us toward what the Duffers have promised will be a satisfying, if heartbreaking, conclusion. The beauty of Stranger Things has always been its characters. Yes, the supernatural horror is compelling. Yes, the 80s nostalgia is fun. But what really makes us care is the people, the kids who became friends through shared trauma, the parents who will do anything to protect their children, the outcasts who found belonging, the flawed individuals who chose heroism when it mattered most. That's why we're so invested in who comes back for the final season. These characters feel real to us. We've watched them grow and suffer and triumph over 4 seasons, spanning 9 years of production. Saying goodbye is going to be devastating, which is exactly why seeing familiar faces one last time will mean so much. As we wait for November 26th, 2025, when the first volume of Season 5 drops, we can speculate and theorize and hope. We can rewatch the earlier seasons, looking for clues and callbacks that might become relevant in the finale. We can debate among ourselves which character deserves a return the most, whose story needs more closure, whose appearance would hit us hardest emotionally. And that's part of the fun, isn't it? The anticipation, the theories, the shared experience of being part of this fandom together. But one thing is certain, When Season 5 finally airs, when we see those familiar faces appear on screen, whether it's Brenner smiling that unsettling smile, or Kaylee creating one last illusion, or Nancy finding Barb's body in the upside down tunnels, we're going to feel something profound: relief, grief, joy, closure. All of it mixing together in that way that only great storytelling can achieve. The Duffer Brothers have been building toward this ending for years. They've said they always knew how the story would conclude, that the final scene was written long ago and has never changed. They've promised something epic and emotional, something that will make us cry, but will also feel earned. And if the character returns are any indication, they're going to deliver on that promise. So whether you're most excited about seeing Brenner's mysterious return, hoping for Kaylee to finally get her moment to shine, mourning Eddie's confirmed absence, or praying that Max wakes up from her coma and gets one last conversation with Billy's spirit, there's something in Season 5 for everyone. The final battle is coming. Vecna is waiting. The Upside Down is bleeding into Hawkins, and all our favorite characters, living and dead, present and past, are going to play a role in how this story ends. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive tonight. If you enjoyed this exploration of potential Season 5 returns, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more Stranger Things content as we count down to the premiere. Consider supporting on Patreon if you'd like to help keep these long-form analyses coming. Check the description for links to my social media where we can continue these discussions. And most importantly, sleep well, dream of Hawkins, and remember that even in the darkest timeline, even when facing the worst monsters imaginable, friendship and love are the forces that save us. Until next time, my dear adventurers, stay safe and sweet dreams.